Hello all, and welcome to another horror review. Once again, I'm joined by my favourite Clive Barker fanboys, Adam and Cameron. Today we're going
Hey,
to be discussing The Midnight Meat Train. Directed by Ryûhei Kitamura, based on the short story by Barker and released in 2008, the movie made $3.5 million on a $15 million budget.
and I can understand that.
This was an interesting... Yeah, so once a month we're going to try and do a Clive Barker crossover movie tie-in something, because I don't know, I think he's, even though he's proclaimed early on as like the next face of horror or the future of horror, he kind of got waylaid. I think the man has genuinely been done disservice over the years.
Yeah.
I think part of it's also his own doing. I mean, at the point where this was really coming to the forefront and the producers and studio really wanted to like focus and highlight on it in sort of the planning phases for this film, which was originally Candyman 2, he was focused on his Aberrat trilogy, and Disney had just bought the Aberrat trilogy, which is focused on a very young adult audience. So he was afraid that this was going to tarnish the view of Disney and the potential Aberrat project that they were developing at the time, which never took off. And so maybe he was right when it was finally released, but like he was the one trying to staunch this in the beginning.
Funny, that's not the story he gives.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I went through the director's commentary yesterday, him and Ray, and he gives a completely different version of events.
There's an interview on his... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, why this movie effectively got stonewalled, and he puts it down to politics within landscape.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't read or watched the commentary. I did read an interview that's on his website about the re-release of the short story as a sort of like special edition, and it went through like this whole long list of like the history of the project and the story and his history with writing, and it was very interesting. That's where I got that little bit though, so I don't know if it's accurate or what. Or maybe he just re-envisions his own history as time goes.
I mean, he's a writer, so why not?
Yeah. But this seems to be like a bit of a pattern with Clive Barker. Like, once again, this is another one of his short stories. And it had to be filled out. And it's not... I haven't seen any other writer ever, or any other book adaptation, where the story has to be padded out to make a movie. It's normally the other way around.
I mean, Stephen King.
I was like, you know what?
Oh, Night Shift alone.
Well, you got Night Shift, you got 1408, which I would go on record as saying the movie's better than the short. But yeah, I mean, that's...
Lawnmower Man, well, that's a bone of contention for him. They just made a completely different story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck.
Stephen King is a big whore. Let's be honest. When it comes to Hollywood, he just like, give it to me, baby, make it rain, and he puts it down his jockstrap. You know, that was him with Hollywood. He didn't give a shit. The only two times he got upset was over The Lawnmower Man and The Shining.
Yeah.
Where the movies are actually better than the stories.
Yeah, which blows my mind because The Shining is just next level.
Yeah, it's perfection on screen.
That's weird. Instead of, I don't know, writers are a strange bunch. Have some great people, but a lot of fucking idiots out there as well, whether they make it or not. And obviously, this show deals with a lot of writers, so we'll kind of see the whole spectrum. And more importantly, the ones that don't get involved and the ones that slag the show off. You're like, okay, right, sorry for offending you for existing.
How dare you?
Right. Definitely a strange thing, but maybe that's what you need to be that obsessive about putting words on paper. Maybe you need to be that slightly deranged and obsessive to make it happen.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I think that sort of follows suit with any sort of creative profession, right? I mean, you have to be very hyper focused and staunchly dedicated to whatever it is you're trying to create, whether that message is through design or whether it's through film or literature. You really need to have this firm vision and then fight for it. And hopefully then on the back end of that, you've got an editor and a publishing house or producers that are going to support you and, you know, champion your cause. But otherwise you're just a fine artist and you're just sort of jerking off on a canvas and you don't care what other people think. So. which we do get some of that with Clive Barker in this film, actually.
Yeah,
it's
funny. He actually talks about this in one of the interviews, because I got the Special Edition Blu-ray, and he talks about how you have to be like just completely, like you said, hyper focused, and if you aren't like that, there's no point doing it. When you see it like with his paintings, that's another level of insanity you see with him, and the ones
immediately recognizable.
Yeah, just stacked up against walls everywhere, and just like, oh dear. The ones he might paint over again are in the tent. He's got a tent for his like shitty ones, and they're all piled up. You're like, it's just complete chaos.
I'm creating a multiverse in my mind where that gallery in the film ended up being the cult house of the Lord of Illusions, with all of his paintings all over the walls and stuff. Just in my own little mind.
It's weird, but what is it with him and the movie industry? It's a strange, like I still can't wrap my head around the movie industry. This the dichotomy of creatives and the most risk averse people somehow are forced to work together. Like, it's surprising that movies get made at all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a couple things that, just on the front end of the entire process, you have the producers who want to hire a director that's going to make a wildly successful film, and you've got them purchasing the rights to a piece of literature that they believe is going to make an amazing film. And then you get that director, and their vision, going right to The Shining here, does not line up with the author's vision. And so they want to create the best film that they possibly can for themselves. And the author just wants a faithful adaptation, and never the two shall meet between the producer. So you start adding in studio heads and more producers and extra writers to rewrite the scripts, and it just becomes a shit show.
And the amount of money that gets flushed down the toilet with this industry, like, what other industry could survive that? Any business that is as wasteful as the movie industry would be under.
The U.S. government's going strong. It flushes a lot of money down the toilet.
Yeah, but that's,
it does the same thing as the movie industry. So it's like, we don't know where the money went.
Yeah, but we need more.
Friggin', it's weird, but yeah, this is another example. But he seemed to have been on board with Ryûhei, the director. He noticed him. He seemed to be more than happy for him to take a story another direction, because this isn't a faithful adaptation.
No,
there's like a lot of changes.
There's like 10
similar though.
Yeah, there's like 10 minutes of this movie that's the short story, and then the rest is just
a whole other plot.
The concept at the back of the storyline, the baseline of the story is there, which I like. Even though they changed it a little bit at the end, I thought the short story was very, very influenced by sort of like H.P. Lovecraft almost. Like, you had this massive ancient entity that has lived in the Americas, for all time. They call it like the America before America or something. I thought
the father of fathers.
I was actually going to come towards that at the end.
And I was like feeling like that was a great connection.
Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, I did.
I mean, dude, you can't. How are you supposed to hammer in like $1 trillion nails without an expensive hammer? It just
That's true.
I worked for let's just say that dealt with housing and social housing, an organization, and they had the best equipped maintenance team ever. Like, all the shiny stuff. And the joke was that when they knocked the door, they used a sponge to knock the door of the tenant when they had to do a repair, so they could sneak off and not be heard.
I mean, that's what you got to do sometimes.
So it doesn't have to be beat for beat.
Yeah.
But how subjective is it when you know something's a good adaptation or a bad one?
I mean, seeing a Raimi in the film gives you a clue that it's not going to be a good one.
That's true. Also, knowing that it's Lionsgate in the late aughts, it's it's going to be questionable at best.
Yeah.
And once again, this is another one I was spared the theatrical release for.
Yeah, I did not see it when it came out.
Yeah. Well, it already went out to 100 theaters, so that was probably why. So let's talk about the first change. Having Leon from being an accountant who just a random encounter to an obsessive photographer who effectively chases down Mahogany.
Yeah.
Was that necessary? And would it have worked if they'd done it the other way?
Well, it provides us with like emotion, right? So it gives him a reason to try to continuously go back to Mahogany. Whereas if it was just an accountant and a chance encounter, there's no real reason for him to chase it. You know, he's trying to capture images of this beautiful city. And that's one of the parts of the story that I really appreciate, is that everyone always talks about New York City as this great grand place, even though anyone who's ever lived there or visited back in, you know, the 70s or 80s know that it was a shithole, monstrous place of hell. And like
the infestation of plastic patties should be enough reason to carpet bomb that city to the ground
this past week,
along with Boston.
But yeah, I mean, it's they present this face of the city that is supposed to be so wonderful, and then you finally get there and you realize that it is not. And as far as like an artistic perspective, we were talking earlier about that sort of obsessive narrow view. For me, it really worked, because then it gave him the avenue of, I need to capture the soul of the city, which ultimately is really what this whole story is about, is realizing what that soul is. And I liked it. I thought it worked.
Yeah.
It goes from being
like I said, I'm just posing the
literal
question to be devil's advocate here, because I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
Really?
There's pieces.
No, let's just say when it comes to certain things, it's like, oh my god, what the hell?
So what were you saying, Cameron?
I was just saying it goes from like a metaphorical soul of the city to like a literal soul of the city. But yeah.
I'm guessing you weren't a fan of this, Cameron. I'm getting those sort of vibes.
Okay.
Right.
I like bad movies. So we know this. That's already
maybe watch
out there on the table. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I didn't buy it. I might still buy it. I don't know. I'm still on the fence. But yeah, it was no Nightbreed. We'll say that.
Yeah.
No, that's true. I think we'll schedule that in for maybe next month or the month after.
That's a good one.
Definitely, that's a whole. That's another one. Long movie, short book.
Yeah. I mean, it's longer than this short story, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely
this one. I was expecting to get this done in about 2 commutes, and I had it to like, oh, is that it? Shit. Okay then.
Yeah, it's a quick one.
And that's not necessarily bad. Like they always say that the young adult. That's why so many young adult books translate well into movies. That's why shorter books do, because if the concept's too long and heavy, then it's impossible to squeeze into 90 minutes. There's still like a perfect example is June. They still can't condense that movie, that book down. Like there's so much in it. Like you're talking about like a 5. Just never mind the whole series, but just for the book, you need at least 3 movies to properly cover every idea.
Right.
We'll not even talk about that abomination, the Dark Tower, because fucking hell.
that was an interpretation.
Shut up.
That has nothing to do with the books. No. I mean, but right this side, yeah, like big fan, but yeah, that movie, it's its own thing. And I'll still defend it, god damn it.
Oh god, it's great there's no discontent in this channel and we all have the same mind.
Right.
Just to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think this movie would have worked without Leon being what he was, changing the character completely. There was really nowhere, like the book or the short stories, a scene. Like that's all it is. It's a scene. It's not really the full fleshed out story. Yeah, there's ideas there, but yeah, if they had tried to, now if they had made like a creep show episode,
ooh,
it would have definitely worked as a creep show episode.
Ooh, I would like that.
An anthology. You know what I mean?
Well, and it would have been less goofy. Like that's the thing too, because it's such an over-the-top series, anyways. The second you see Raimi, you're just gonna be like, "Oh, okay, there's the wink. Let's get on with the gore."
Yeah,
Would Raimi have made a good Leon as the accountant?
Who?
Oh, sorry,
Possibly.
don't joke. Terry Raimi, would he have made a good Leon as the accountant as opposed to
if
Bradley
it
Cooper
was a creep
as...
show episode? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I watched the behind the scenes of him doing his scene in it, and he's giggling like a little girl, going, "I'm gonna get my head smashed in," and the eyeballs are gonna pop out.
Yeah.
I get paid for doing this. Sucks to be you.
and that's why
And the other
Raimis are
two
amazing.
actors with him,
Yeah.
covered in blood, and he's just like, "This is great."
Yeah, I wonder if there was a practical effect version of it that was done on set, because the eyeball flying at the camera,
Oh,
as soon as you see that sort of corny CGI work, it doesn't line up with the gritty underbelly tone that they're trying to sell us.
yeah,
Right.
that's
That was
So you either got to go
on the
full
notes.
Raimi or don't go Raimi at all.
Mhm.
Mhm. And
Yeah,
I think there was a
that's
lot of this is where the whole back and forth with the studio was happening, and they were basically trying to bully the director.
Oh, really?
And the thought, because this was his first Hollywood movie, like he was an established director in Japan, and I want to actually check out his work, because I have a funny feeling he has that sort of, not quite anime, but I think he has a certain vision.
Mhm.
And it'd be interesting to see it actually in his own environment
well, honestly,
before
like
coming to Hollywood.
knowing now that he was established as a Japanese director, like I can totally see like the J horror aspect of this shit, and like I actually appreciate it more now with that in my head. But it's problematic because the American film system cannot necessarily compete with that. Like in Japan, it's like, oh, you want to make something crazy and bonkers? Cool, crank it up to 11, and like effects like that in anything else would land because everything else is so hyper stylized like that as is. And
But the
I
mainstream,
think that's a bit
like
of a
the
problem.
mainstream studios, like Landscape, like that's first start. What the hell's Landscape doing making a horror movie?
They've
Well,
done some good-
Lionsgate, they did a lot in the early aughts.
But it's like generic slashers. They haven't really give us an example of.
American Psycho, House of a Thousand Corpses,
Was that a
Descent, Hostel. I mean, they've
would you
done
say
some
American
stuff.
Psycho was a horror movie?
Yeah,
Comedy horror, but yeah. We should
yeah,
talk
he's
about
a
American
fucking
Psycho.
slasher. Like it's yeah.
I don't know. I'd say more thriller sort of.
Dude, High Tension. Lionsgate did
Yeah.
High Tension. That was
Yeah, high
amazing.
tension. Oh
That's
my
something
God.
actually,
How the fuck did I not think?
Where
of
does that
one first?
line? Because that was another thing. I'm actually going to talk about one of my guests next month.
Mhm.
Because she brought the point up and did it very well, that the mainstream hate horror.
Mhm.
And that's why a lot of creators create thrillers, because thriller is a sanitized word for
Mhm.
those that can't deal with the idea of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Where does that line get crossed?
That's pretty. I mean, it's subjective, of course, but my idea on that is when a movie goes from being fun to being serious. Like if it's serious, it's a thriller. If it's fun and enjoyable, it's horror. It's like
Interesting.
it's people that
So-
are so hung up on the word horror are just people that don't want to admit they can enjoy things that aren't pretentious. Like you can't be like, oh yeah, I loved Hereditary, but Killer Clowns from Outer Space, that's bullshit. Like, no, fuck you. Those live in the same realm. It's the same genre. They're just different ways of expressing that genre.
Yeah.
Like those can exist in the same universe, and you can enjoy them both. But people can't.
Back to sorry, this is why we came live a bit earlier, because we were starting into a full conversation as usual. I was like, fuck, may as well just press the button and go over it now, because we'll end up being an hour late. Because
Right.
Yeah, like when we talked about The Witch, that's a horror movie,
Great horror movie.
but it's serious.
Yeah.
All you got to do is take out a couple of scenes, and it's just a period drama.
Yeah,
like
but
easy,
really high
easy.
tension.
Yeah, high tension. Whoa.
Now, I
get rid of like 2 scenes, and it's completely
now
different.
Here's the
movie.
question, though. I enjoyed that movie. Watch it a million times, no problem. Did I have fun watching that movie? Suppose that's a question. Let's just come back to your point.
I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. I'm
yeah.
Like I said, I'm just
because how much enjoyment do you get from being disturbed emotionally, or just filled with
absolutely
tension? Because that's really what it comes down to. Like when I think of a horror film, I don't always think of like enjoying it, laughing while gore is happening, even though that is definitely some aspect of horror. I just want to feel something. Because I'm so hollow normally.
Yeah.
I just want to feel something that you don't get out of a drama, you don't get out of a comedy. I love that sort of creeping doom that a lot of horror provides. When it comes to thrillers, you still get that aspect of it, and so I appreciate and enjoy that as well. But you have to have at some level a baseline of, okay, we're going to present you with some violent gore. And for me, that's where the line between thriller and horror comes in. You can have your funny, you can have your tension, you can have your upset stomach watching the whole thing, but as long as there's a level of gore involved, then it's more horror than thriller.
So when it's a visual, you're saying horror is the visual aspect?
The substance.
When it's brought in, that's when it switches. That's when it goes over.
Yeah, but I would call thriller under the horror tent anyway.
Yeah, well, it's we've talked, like I say, we've talked about this. It's all I'm doing is trying to discuss a point, just purely out of interest. I'm not trying to make one, if that makes sense. We know that horror, like, it's the first bastion of creativity. It always has been, from grim fairy tales, from like fables to like campfire tales. It's always been that warning. Those tales have always been horror. And it's such a wide-ranging genre, so many subgenres and so many crossovers. But I don't think anybody, and maybe it's better that we can't, actually distill down to what that atom of horror is. What's that molecule that makes something into a horror movie or book? Or
I mean, once you see this guy yanking teeth out of a corpse, you're in a horror film.
Yeah. Well, it's just like the whole thing I'm thinking through this is like, the good old early aughts of torture porn.
Yeah.
Like, I miss that era. Not because I thought it was, of any nutritional value. It's just like, all right, let's see who's going to up the ante just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think because we're in an era now of just sanitization. It's, everything's just sanitized and safe and predictable. That it's good to see something that pushes the boat out and isn't afraid to like test people's boundaries, and you're not necessarily going to leave the cinema feeling good about yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's very rare now.
Dude, I just watched Infinity Pool like a month ago. That still staying with me as a fucked up, crazy thriller. Like it's like the challenging for anyone watching it. It forces you to think and question and feel bad about yourself as you're watching it. It's a brilliant film. So it's exactly that rare example of modern day filmmaking where you're not really it's a big budget, but it's not really concerned about pleasing anyone. It's just this is a story that we are going to tell. Deal with it, bitch.
Yeah. Well, and those are always the stories that last anyways.
Yeah. But then why is there so much? Because this movie is an example of the creatives and the studio button heads the whole way through it. And that's why you get the extended edition, which was, most of it was cut out.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the difference of like, 10, 20 minutes.
There's a good 10 minutes.
I didn't know there's an extended version. I've never seen that.
That's what I watched, honestly. So for example, we'll go back to Raimi scene. Him and the couple When she gets her head lopped off,
Yeah.
you actually get the whole extended version of her and looking, from the point of view camera.
Oh, really?
And you get the whole.
That was pretty funny.
The fact is, they had a stunt double wearing a helmet, and that's where Vinnie Jones, Mahogany's bashing her with a rubber mallet, But then they had the actual extended scene of her head detached, gasping, and looking at her own body.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
And a lot of these scenes were all drawn out. Like even the initial scene would come in, which is interesting the way that did this movie. The initial scene was so visceral and messy, and then we find out at the end of the movie why. Because it was weird why it was like that, and then everything just became so clinical. The model, the Japanese model, who was getting harassed by the gangbangers, they cut out the actual scene where she gets her head twisted off.
I'm trying to remember how she.
So he whacks her in the face with a hammer, and her neck just goes.
Right. Yeah.
So they cut that out. So every scene where you actually see the graphic nature of this, it all been cut out for the cinema release.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, that's so dumb too, because it's like at the end of an era where like that's if you had a horror movie and it didn't have over the top violence like that, it failed. So that's bizarre.
Yeah, I would have liked to see that. That's how I like to do in all of my models, is watching the neck twist when you hit them with that big ass mallet.
Absolutely, that's what they're there for.
Yeah, exactly.
For. Come on. They don't serve any other purpose in life, and especially if you let them open their mouths.
Right.
That's where it all goes to ratchet.
Oh man.
Oh god. Wouldn't take
any profession where you're literally a coat rack. You can't really take them seriously. So it's not our fault; it's their fault.
Oh my god! I ever tell you guys about the time that I was doing I was building a set for a Star Wars fan film. Like we shared we shared a studio. Like there's just this huge lot. We had a couple spaces of it, but right next to us was usually every weekend was booked out for a different photographer. So we'd have like different models come in, and just watching them go at it, it's like already you think they're pretty goddamn pretentious, but seeing it live, it's like, what the fuck world do you live in? Like, I'm like trying not to choke on my fucking tacos during my lunch break because I'm laughing so hard at these people. So serious, like, hair and fans. And it's like, you're putting on a fucking t-shirt. Just take a goddamn nice picture of the t-shirt. Fuck. Kids these days.
I love how pretentious people are.
I couldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Do you know where I've actually seen that? In the LARPing community.
Really?
All the people that should not be that.
I remember this one guy, right? He was a level 20 werewolf, right? He got me leg limp, couldn't walk 2 steps. But he was a super combat fucking, werewolf. And then they actually had to do a scene and he trips over himself and like lands on his face. I'm just like, become the sage old warrior. No, I've built this character for years. Yeah. And the people who are in charge, as in the king, queen, the generals actually think they have some sort of agency over your personal life.
That's funny.
And it was weird because you had this thing that I only went once. Like I used to have a group of messed about with, and it was just really just fight with rubber swords. That's all I used it for, a wee bit of training. But when I actually went to the event, there was meant to be a time like a cutoff, or you went behind the tape. That meant you were out of character.
Right.
You have these fucking idiots come in, still trying to talk to you as if they were, in charge of you. And I'm like, mate, I'm sitting here, I've got 4 beers on me now. You need to fuck off.
Oh, man.
Be like, I'm like, no, I've knocked off. You need to really go away now because it's not going to. And lucky enough, I had enough mates that knew me because they were stupid enough to invite me in the first place. They're like, go away now.
It makes me think away from of what we do in the shadows.
Yeah.
Like, for real. Yeah. They had like this whole LARPing thing. I think it was the first season, but you could argue that like the show itself is just a bunch of Vampire Masquerade LARPers. The way they interact.
But that was the whole thing behind it. That was the comedy. You know, it's like a double meaning because you've played Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, I have. I haven't ever LARPed anything before, but I have.
I went once to a live action LARPing Vampire the Masquerade, and holy fuck,
I can't handle those types.
I started getting the twitch afterwards. I'm like,
I've thought about it, but yeah, I couldn't do it. I would end up showing up in Star Wars costume and beating people up with my lightsaber.
That'd be awesome.
It would be pretty awesome.
Awesome. I'm a vampire Sith. I will fuck you up.
Fucking Darth Nihilus, man.
Yeah.
Lord of Hunger. I'll eat everybody's souls.
I've actually, I know we're kind of going off on one of our wonderful tangents, but I'm actually, I've spoken to quite a few directors who crowdfund for films. I'm going to be speaking to Acrorstar again beginning of the month. Always good to have them guys on, crowdfund their latest project. And it's a great way. It's just crowdfunding has such a bad rap. And I wonder, has the bad rap been put out by the studios who feel threatened by this? Or is it genuine misconception? Because I did ask them about what crowdfunding was, what what are the pros and cons? One of the cons is definitely the length of time. Because people have this immediate, you pay money, you get the product.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that they're coming in as investors at the very beginning, even if it's principal photography stage. Now, principal photography, the movie's a year away or a year and a half. You know, that's how long it could take on a good, good time scale. It could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years away. Do you think that's what maybe...
There's one that I helped fund at this point, like 10 years ago, and it's not even close to being started shooting. Like, he's still in pre-pro. And I think that's where the problem with it is people don't understand how fucking long it takes to make a movie sometimes. And you get some that, like the last one that I put in for, movie's already done. Movie shot. They were literally just, they were crowdfunding for a very specific release. Like, they were trying to put it out on VHS, but it was too fucking expensive. So they're like, hey, if you buy shit through here, we can release it on VHS. And even then, like, the movie's already made. The movie's going to be shipped here in like a couple of weeks. And it ended like 3 weeks ago, and people are already losing their shit. It's like, fuck, it says it in the description. This is the time frame. Like, you got to give it a little bit of fucking wiggle room.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it that whole one click, it arrives in your door next day, like Amazon type stuff? The people have
I think that is the problem. Well, part of the problem.
What can they do you think, to negate that? Is it more updates? Because what can you say? It's I have the problem with when talking to the authors, because they're trapped in this kind of thing of, right, I'm writing a book, the book's out, I'm writing, and there's not really much to tell unless you're going to give away beat for beat and bore people to death, and ruin the whole story.
I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about just interviewing them about the subject, I think there's a lot of ways to get around, revealing the story and stuff. But if you're talking about what drawbacks are of crowdfunding and how to manage expectations of an audience, I think regular updates is incredibly important to the audience. But also just like, if they don't like it, they don't have to crowdfund it, I mean, the reality is, studio interference has its negatives, but it also has huge positives. And that means you have much more people working on the project than just the small team of the independent filmmaker. And you're able to do infinitely more in infinitely less time. And so if you're crowdfunding a independent creator and you're expecting their film to be out in any quick, rotation of the fucking sun or moon, you're the idiot. Like, that shit takes so much time and preparation and, scouting locations, getting talent, making sure schedules line up, and, hoping it doesn't fucking rain when you're planning on shooting, or hoping that it does rain when you're trying to plan on, I mean, there's so much involved that you can't take that instant gratification mindset for those types of projects.
We'll go back to the Witcher game, but we talked about it. Were they, they did their interviews and talked about going together. One of the jobs they had to do, like the cast as well, was go through the forest and pull all the buds of the trees because it was spring.
That's so fun.
When they were shooting.
Yeah.
But that was something they had to spend an hour and a half doing each morning. Everybody just out the big line and just click, click, click to do the scene.
Yeah.
That's
what child labor's for, by the way.
Right.
Not be doing
perfectly legal in this country. Again, almost.
Yeah. Sucks to them. You know, that was their silliness. But then again, what else are you going to use the meat bags for? You know, to get in front of the screen. May as well put them to use because
step away from the meat.
Yes. It's an interesting one because the more I'm thinking, Clive Barker should have had, consider how long running he is, his loyal fan base, he should have been able to fund a few independent projects.
Oh, he definitely could have.
Maybe no, because it just seems to be every time he gets involved with the studio, he's butting heads and he's, you know, losing his shit. And even this one, he wasn't directly, he kind of stepped back from it and he'd only pop on. And it was Ryûhei, the director, was taking most of the shit. And he even said himself, he'd come in to see his face, you know, we'd see Ryûhei's face like fucking, like, and he's like, oh shit, I'm gonna just not talk to you right now and give you 5 minutes to calm down. Because he was saying that in Japan, they would spend up to 48 hours continuously shooting just to get it done. Wow. Where that work ethic doesn't transfer across.
No. Actors are a delicate sort.
Yes, very much.
They need their.
They got all these union rules and regulations. It's fucking stupid.
If you ever want to see someone who's prepared to knock their balls in, just look at Jackie Chan's career.
Yeah.
That guy's mental.
He's great though. He's great fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love him. That's what I said. It's you know me. I'm not going to talk about somebody I can't be arsed with.
Yeah.
We can give him a time of day, but that's what I mean. He is mental. He'd be filming like 3 movies at the same time, you know, jumping from one to the other and then brutalizing himself in each one. And that just seems to be and that's obviously Hong Kong cinema, which is, yeah, we need to go visit Hong Kong cinema sometime. They've got a couple of the Ghost Story series. That's a brilliant one. I think there's 3 of those movies. Like loads of great horror. But yeah, just the different, you know, mentality coming into the Hollywood machine and butting heads with people over silliness.
Yeah.
During the actual plot, let's talk about the movie again.
Oh yeah.
That's why we turned up, wasn't it? In this short story, Mahogany was actually quite friendly and talkative, and him and the train driver had a good rapport.
That's interesting because I took a little different approach on that. I thought they had a professional understanding,
but it was a good. It
wasn't like
completely inverted on his head in the movie.
Yeah,
and I'm just wondering, was that necessary?
So it kind of felt like the remake of Pet Sematary, where they tried to keep the character close to the book, but they didn't give it enough context or anything. It's just like out of the blue, here he is, and all the cool, scary shit that he did that was so just big at the end of the short story was just sort of like the death at the end of Idle Hands, where it's just like, boop. Oh, okay. I guess that happened. Like I feel like they really fucking ruined that character in the movie. And like the whole tongue scene. Ugh.
Yeah. I just don't like Bradley Cooper for the one to get his tongue ripped out because just his reactions didn't land well with me personally. But that I love that scene. I didn't like how he was sort of that ultimate powerful guy, like choking him and lifting him off the ground.
Because he wasn't in the short story. That was, in fact, that role was meant to have been carried out by one of the fathers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because in the short story, it was one of the fathers
that
actually approaches Leon.
Oh, yeah, explains that he's going to be that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which would have made sense. But the studio wanted to wipe out, and this is kind of jumping ahead of here, but the studio actually wanted to wipe out the whole storyline of the fathers.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, that's like the whole point. Purpose.
Just the whole concept of them, the idea of them, the ending of the movie. They just didn't want the fathers. And you're like, where does this story go?
I mean, they pretty much X'd out the whole ending.
Yeah.
To be fair, they just had the creepies that came on the train, but yeah, I mean, they pretty much got what they wanted because there was a grand entity at the end.
But we didn't get to see it.
Yeah.
In fact, we're lucky to get to see what we did.
I didn't like the fight sequence at the end either. I thought it was totally
It made no fucking sense.
The studio basically they'd run out of money
like,
at that point in the movie,
fight.
and they just needed something cheap.
The thing is,
like, it looked like it.
Yeah, that scene in the book was quick, over, and beautiful.
And because the tension was the whole, oh fuck, he's gonna get caught, and then he's like, fuck this shit, I'm gonna get caught either way, I'm gonna go down swinging.
Yeah, just the way they wrote that with the knife going through his throat and it being over, I was just like, fuck yeah, that was beautiful. Because that let you know that these people are just normal people. They're serving something that isn't normal, but they're just normal dudes. I mean, throughout the whole short story, Mahogany was talking about how he was getting old. He should start thinking about successor. And, like that whole dynamic was never really played at all in the film, which I thought was the great aspect of the short story, that they were serving something that was beyond and sort of, mysterious and otherworldly almost, or maybe just primordial. And they themselves were just normal dudes.
Yeah.
And as soon as they implemented the weird nodule things and his sort of superhuman power, it took away from the potential strength of the ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then bringing in the detective, it's like that. Why does there have to be a secret order? Like there's the conductor, there's the butcher. How much more do you need for these people to get by? Like that doesn't. That part sounds weird with me.
When he went to the police station and he gave over the photographs, and you knew that the detective was bent. Like you knew from the first 20 seconds of her talking, and she was trying to effectively stitch him up or warn him off, as in, I'm going to stitch you up if you do this. There's somebody coming in evidence. I was here, blah, blah, blah. At least pretend to go through the motions, but the minute you start acting like that, I'm instantly suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of it, like I had a bad experience with a cop. I'm the only one in the world that, in like, it was, and so when I watched that, I was like, no, that's just cops. They don't want to do that.
I agree. It reminds me of the time I got shot at, and then I almost got in trouble for being high instead of the kid that shot at me getting in trouble for unloading a weapon in city limits at people.
Yeah.
Priorities, eh?
Yeah.
We live in the West, man. That's normal. It's called frontier justice.
Our place was slightly different growing up. You got to slap right in the back of the head, told not to do it again.
No, but so when that happened, I was just like, oh yeah, obviously she's the bad guy, but not far from reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, she's probably an asshole, but she's also probably a really good cop.
But she is a cop, so
pretty much standard. I just find that jarring. Her character in that didn't need to be there.
Right.
Like that was one that could have easily done without her.
Because they never paid off like this conspiracy,
No.
I mean, they explained that she was a part of it, but that was it.
Yeah, it's like they tried at the very end when, oh well, he just wants his property back, and then as soon as Bradley Cooper is the new butcher, she hands him the train stuff. It's like that didn't need to happen at all. Like that's one less salary you could have fucking paid and put that on the screen.
Yeah.
And maybe spent a wee bit more in the CGI.
Or
a bit more. Like the thing is, if you're
let's talk about the CGI, because it was
it was terrible, but it could have been okay if they had really leaned into it. I mean, I'm a sucker for practical blood, and they used a lot of it and over the top amounts of it. But there was not a very good binding of the or meshing rather of the CGI blood and the practical blood. Yeah.
It went cartoonish. It went from like visceral horror movie to a cartoon and back again. That scene, like I said, with Ted Raimi, just getting his head bashed in the eyeballs, I cringed.
Oh, I was laughing my ass off.
I just cringed going, did you think that's looked good? And when I watched it with the commentary, and they're busy sucking each other off, saying how fucking wonderful this is, I'm like, no way could you have looked at this and went, yeah, fucking masterpiece.
If it was a serious actor, yes, it would have been a travesty. But the fact that it's a fucking Raimi, it's like, yeah, I accept it. I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah. I just wish if they were going to do that over the top, they would have kept going with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would want to have seen more. You know, the reality is that you could have done it with practical, kept it gritty, and it would have been infinitely more believable. Mm-hmm. You start off that way because that was early on. And so you're sort of prepping the audience like, oh, this is the type of film this is. And then you don't deliver fully, then it just lets the film down as a whole.
Yeah,
and I think that's what happened for me anyway.
Yeah,
even though I do like the film. Like I've watched it like 4 times. You know, I enjoy it, but it's just not my favorite.
No, but you wouldn't be critical, you know, and we're not here just to blindly go, this is what we like. We're like because of this. No dissenting voice, we're not allowed to criticize anything.
Mm-hmm.
We've got our problems, but yeah, you can still watch it again. That's the thing, because the overall essence is there. And I think that's the important thing. If the overall essence of a story and a story's being told and it's made believable by the characters, you can forgive a lot of things. It's weird because the CGI on the train, like some of the stuff where the train's going past places and it looks believable, I didn't realize it was done by CGI. So that's
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so
really?
a lot of times,
when
it's going past certain stations. Now, the bit where the train's going through looks cartoony as fuck, and the bit at the end where he's running and jumping on the train looks like a freaking cartoon.
Oh yeah, that was pretty silly.
But there's other aspects where you don't realize the CGI, and you're like,
"Oh man,
how do you do so bloody brilliantly there, and then do this shit at the same time?" Like you'd expect it to be consistently bad the whole way through.
It felt pretty bad every time the conductor was involved.
Yes.
That was just atrocious.
Do you know what it was? Fucking Tony Curran without a beard is just a travesty in itself.
I don't think that was in that. It was like flat as hell. There's no dimensionality.
Yeah.
That's what it was, because they removed his magical powers once he shaved his beard off and lost his classical accent. That was it. That's him, no longer an actor. He's just a wooden plank.
Oh man. It was terrible. Every time I was just like, wait, what is he sitting on the front of the bus? Like the train station?
Cardboard cutout.
Yeah.
And he's just
like a cardboard cutout just put there. So
it's weird. Like they couldn't afford to actually pay him to sit in a cab.
It just makes me feel bad for the people that do that for a living. Like you're locked in. Like that's it. You're in this tiny little space and all you see is tunnel. Like fuck that. It's a horrible life.
Gotta be a model bunch anyway, so
raised by a bunch of fucking gangbangers. Yeah, it was rough. I think the reason why the train station stuff didn't bother me so much because I was so bothered by the fact that apparently the butcher shop has access to a secret underground train connection.
Oh, I believe it.
I mean, that was one of my questions. Why did Mahogany need a day job?
Why did he have to go to the fucking train station outside of his own work if he had one in his work? Makes no sense.
Well, duh, because there's not people waiting in the secret one underneath his work, and he's got to follow people. God, Adam, come on, just think.
I'm an idiot. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very confused on that. I'm like, is this like a really bad, fucking like 25th Street thing going on? Like, are we gonna see some opium dens and shit?
Oh, that would...
And everybody in the butchers and the meat factories in on it because. Leon's character wakes up after being knocked out in the middle of it, and nobody bats an eyelid.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that nobody, like, I was making a joke with my wife last night. It's like, oh yeah, I mean that's just obviously that's how you get into a job. Like, I just kind of showed up one day at a tattoo shop looking like I belonged there, and I've been in it for 20 years almost now. It's like he just puts on a hard hat and a coat with a camera around his dick, and is like. Nobody even bats an eye. They're like, yeah, no, obviously he works here. This is normal.
Yeah. So, but why did Mahogany need a day job?
I mean, even butchers got to eat.
You've got a secret society. keeping the city safe by providing food for the fathers of the city, surely they would be able to at least, I don't know. And he stays in a hotel as well, which is also weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that because you'd mentioned keep the city safe. What is the overall purpose? Because I didn't so much as think that it kept the city safe. I interpret it as they were paying homage to the founders, like the original peoples. Like, and they were, of course.
I think it was a short story hinted towards if they didn't, then they would rise up and consume the city.
Yeah, you're right.
I think it was a short story, so I kind of had that in my head. But the movie gives you no indication whatsoever as to the hows or why. There's quite a bit of time wasted, I think, where maybe delving into the mythos a bit. I'm not explaining everything, but
there's too much time on Leslie Bibb. Like Maya Jones, her character.
I was going to ask, what was the point of her character?
She was pretty pointless.
She bothers me like a lot in this. Like I've seen her in other things, and she's not great or good or anything, but she's not terrible. In this, I felt like she was like really bad. I didn't understand her motivations. Like the whole purpose of her being in it seemed to me that once he got too deep in and couldn't consciously understand, she had to then propel the story to explain to us what was going on. But at that point, we already knew what was going on. So there's no real reason to have her there at all. I thought she was going to be like captured, and then that would be a draw for him to then go and try to save her from Mahogany or something. That would have made sense. And they tried to do that a little bit at the end, but it didn't really connect.
Well, and just there was so much about like anytime she was on the scene, like for instance, like the whole her and homeboy breaking into Mahogany's apartment. How did you know? Well, I guess we knew he was going to be there because of the pictures, because the marquee on the outside, but they didn't follow him in. They didn't see him leave his apartment, but they just so happened to be on the right floor and just so happened to break into the right room like that. How? Like, what the fuck? Like, you got to make it make at least a tiny bit of sense.
Yeah, that the whole side plot really didn't need to happen. Once again, there is quite a bit of time wasted where they had a focus, but then is this the running battle between them and the studio? The studio want the love interest, they want this, they want that. They don't want the actual story. It's funny because, and this is my whole question with Clive Barker and the movie studios, they seem to want Clive Barker as a name, but they don't want the stories. We've seen it with Hellraiser, we've seen it with Candyman, we've seen it even Nightbreed. Nightbreed was changed slightly, off the beaten track. I haven't read Cabal in ages, but I didn't get the sense of the same story being told. It seems to be that they want Clive Barker, but they don't want his actual grittiness.
You want a tame version of Clive Barker.
But you don't get a tame
Clive
version.
Barker's strength is taking everything and then going to 11. You got gore, take it to 11. You got sex, take it to 11. You get demons jerking off on the street. I mean, Clive Barker is like the nth degree, and so they want the strength of the story without the extremity of the.
But the two go hand in hand. It was actually funny because during the interview, or the commentary, he was talking about how he has he got one of the chainmail shirts and how it's great, and he started in this whole sexual thing, how it's great against naked skin. You can do this, and it actually went silent for a bit because you can tell the director's kind of edging away from him, and then he kind of goes, "Oh well, if you're into that sort of stuff," and then you kind of hear Riley going. He's about to fucking go full tilt. The man's like, fucking
go put on the shirt.
It feels, when it rubs against your nipples, and he's trying to get himself fucking excited.
I love that.
But that's Clive Barker, and that's why we love the
Clive Barker, man.
He's a horror bag. He fucking
he's great. He's great.
He embraces who he is. He embraces his deviancy. He embraces fucking all that stuff that people find taboo and are afraid to look at. But why would you try and bring it? There's tons of writers, there's tons of names. If you just want a name, there's loads of names out there. So why is it the studios and they don't do any research. It seems because the brain
that
are on board.
Part that's like, pretty much par for the course. Like a lot of adaptation rights are bought before the releases are even out. Like especially nowadays, most books, as soon as there's a title before it's even released, a studio already has the options paid for. Like they don't give a shit what it is. They just need ideas. And that's how a lot of adaptation work, becomes a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they don't do research. They don't give a fuck. They just need stories.
And then they encounter Clive Barker and they're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
It's sad and hilarious at the same time. Because like I said, on this episode out, the man has been done such a disservice,
mm-hmm.
I think, in terms of his work. It's just not right.
I mean, the successes he's had are so great that the amount of shit is just it's tolerable for me. Like I have the original Candyman and I've got Hellraiser films, like the first one. And
is he trying to get a copy of bloody Hellbound Heart again?
Oh, I don't know about it.
No, well, obviously mine copy disappeared up in flames, so I went to get a new copy, and it's frigging out of print, and it's going at like stupid amounts of money, like second-hand copies. Yeah,
holy shit,
it's bloody hard to get a hold of.
I love it. But like you have those great films, and even Nightbreed to a degree, the new version of Nightbreed. Great.
I would go with the director's cut, not the Cabal cut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, the Cabal cut
was the director's cut.
No. So there's 3 different versions. There's OG, so the theatrical, the director's cut, and then the Cabal cut was the one that he put together using dailies and stuff. The Cabal cut's really hard to watch unless you really, really want to watch it. Like that's my favorite.
That's the one I've watched.
And I fucking love it. But yeah,
and that was the one that came out like 7 years ago or something, 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was pretty recent.
Yeah. I've only seen the OG and the director's cut.
The Cabal cut, it's put together in a way that it does feel more like Cabal, but it's something that was shot in the fucking 80s, and they're using dailies, so really grainy, shitty, not like well lit VHS tapes to kind of fill in the blanks to get the narrative close to where you wanted it. So
yeah.
It takes you out a little bit, but I mean, it's worth checking it out if you can check it out, definitely. But I would prefer the director's cut.
I just feel like that's sort of par for the course when it comes to Barker's stuff, because we know the stories behind what we see on screen, and so I'm taking with me everything that I already know. So I forgive a lot of the ridiculous stuff or some of the stupid decisions, or the missing holes in the story, because I'm filling it in as I'm watching it in my head. And so I end up liking it, even though it's pretty much garbage in most cases. And that's why when you do get those adaptations that are just stellar, you're just like, fuck, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't know. So, when it comes to this particular one where they sort of chopped up the original story and they filled in with a bunch of silly putty and stuff, I still enjoyed it, because, if this is the only version of Clive Barker we can get, I'm going to take it. I just need a little Barker in my life,
Yeah. But even this, considering how sanitized they try to make it, it's still, like, in terms of a slasher movie or a horror movie, it's still up there. When you think of the generic schlock, it's put out all the time. This will still be watched. People will still pick this Blu-ray up, or when it goes to 4K eventually, they'll pick that up too. That's just one of those stories that will endure. I just hope somebody goes over, get the stills and tidy that freaking CGI up a bit.
Right.
Just it gives a wee bit of throw a wee bit of sand on it and dirty it up a bit. This is principal early noughties, fucking they didn't quite know what CGI was, and there's kind of going with an animated sort of mentality, I think, rather than, at least now it's a bit more polished, that they know they've had to go back to practical effects because they understand when it got too cartoony. That people just snooped out, and you lost all suspension of disbelief. So we kind of had to go back to basics, and then CGI is a touch-up, which yourself, when you see movies like that, they're brilliant. should Mahogany have been older in the movie? Because they were portraying a man in his like 60s who looked as if he was reasonably long lived, but he's still an older man. You know, he's struggling. They did it with this using illness, obviously, as the catalyst for him coming to an end of his time. What do you think? Did it work?
I don't think he needed to cut off his fucking extra nipples, but I mean, I believe that he was dying when he started coughing up blood randomly.
Yeah. Once again, during the commentary, when they talked about that scene, he's like, everyone asked me what it was, and I was like, I don't know, just look cool. And he just threw that scene in to look cool.
No, it did not.
For it. The director's going, that just looked cool. I wanted to do it for fun. You're like, okay,
all right.
So there's no reason why you're cutting your bits off and fucking storing them.
I mean, as far as if you're going to pad out this short story into a film, and you're going to have him fighting, young, athletic types of people, then it makes more logical sense to have a badass like fucking Vinny fucking these people up.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it more of like this very short story and you want to creatively tell an interesting narrative in a short amount of time, then I prefer the original version 100%. Mm-hmm. But Vinny Jones, I can't fault that guy. He has this demeanor that just is brutal. He could be attending a birthday party and I would still be terrified of the man.
Right.
And he actually purposely, he had a script. And he purposely said, nah, it's not going to work. And he chose to remain silent through it. That was another thing.
I like that, though, because that's, I mean, Mahogany in the book talks a lot. Like, he's the majority of the talking.
So he's actually quite demeanable.
I think it worked better this way.
He was quite jovial. That's what I couldn't get my head around. In the book, he's actually quite a nice chap.
Well, and it makes sense too, because he understands that it's almost time for him to finally just be done with this shit. It's like that acceptance and the light at the end of the tunnel, no pun intended, that he's finally going to get a break. So I understand that in the book, but yeah, like I think he went the right direction with that, because he was so much more menacing with 0 lines in this.
It was funny because Quentin Jackson, who's a former MMA fighter, and he was in the A-Team movie, that remake that they did. He had the director screaming at him because when he first went in to do that fight scene, he was like, I'm afraid of hurting Vinny Jones. Just classic. Because I remember Vinny Jones giving an interview about how when he first did Gone with 60 Seconds, like nobody knew who he was. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't like nobody had a clue about his previous footballing career or the fact that he's one of every match he would get into a duff up. Mm-hmm. He's one of the last interesting characters. There was him, Eric Cantona, and Paul Gascoigne. Those three during that era, there's this famous scene got to the front of the newspapers where he's like squeezing the balls of Paul Gascoigne, and Gascoigne's like, oh! He just fucking like right in front of the cameras.
That's awesome.
He is on record for, I think, being the fastest person to get a red card during a match. And I shared just to put in context, just obviously you guys being from across the pond, maybe not being familiar with his previous career. What did you think of the video I shared with you? The clips of
loved it. I was hoping there was going to be a little bit more violence, but it was still pretty fucking funny to see him just out there knocking motherfuckers down.
But that's another thing as well. I think we expect now in the digital age to have access to everything, but back then it was network TV. Yeah. So actually getting that footage is pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
To put in YouTube, unless the studio releases it, you don't see it, and it's one of them things. If you didn't record the actual match on TV or that, it's very hard to actually compile like a lot of older stuff. So he'd done much more. That was only a snapshot, but throughout his career, he would punch people. He'd sink the head into them.
God damn.
You know what I mean? Him and Eric Cantona, the two, they'd go at it every match. They're playing against each other. They'd friggin' be hammering tongs, and at least one of them would be getting the card.
That's funny.
He was like the last hard man because football is just it's freaking ballerina sport now, and I never was a fan. I'm a rugger bugger, so watching ballerinas dance around and tripping over their shoelaces now and crying, I'm just like, no, he was one of the last.
That's definitely one thing I'll give them is they are excellent at getting hurt. Like, oh, I tripped. Oh, it's the worst thing in the world. But yet, like the only sport that I really watch, like I watch hockey. It's like you'll see motherfuckers get their throats slit and they finish out the fucking round. It's like, just give me a towel, I'll wrap it up and I'll fucking win this game. Like,
yeah, it's gone. I was never, like I said, I'm a rugby fan, so footballers never really fucking did it. But they were the last three. Those three people were like the last of an old era of football where it was actually tough sport where they actually went at each other. And it was just funny the way typical, Mr. Big Bollocks, I'm afraid of hurting.
Yeah, that's funny.
Not realizing who he was dealing with, and the director even knew. Japanese director, you fucking get in there, fucking.
I loved it. Every time I see his face, I think of Snatch personally, but like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch are just like the epitome of him.
Yeah.
And I love to see him in this role and really just because it became totally believable for me that, okay, they're taking a different direction with this character. You have to have someone that can take out these, really, large fit dudes. At the end, I didn't believe at all that fucking Tons of Fun could have done it. He's just too wafy in this film. Bradley Cooper. But compared to Vinny, like, fuck, that dude would be able to kill anyone.
Yeah. All this shit in there, even the goofy, like, stabs him in the arm and then lifts him up by the knife up against the, like, even that, whatever. I believed he could do that shit.
Yeah.
Like,
that was awesome.
Bradley Cooper, not so much.
Yeah, and then again, we'll see this because it comes kind of full circle. Like, the first kill was Bradley Cooper's kill, and it was all over the show.
Wait, what?
And then, because that's what the. So when you see the guy
the guy in the train that wakes up, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That was Bradley Cooper's kill?
Yes, that's why.
I think I missed that.
Right, so that was the whole kind of point that they showed the first kill of Bradley in the mahogany. I don't know why they called him mahogany.
How the fuck did I miss that? I've seen this film so many times.
It was very easy to miss. Well, it's because the same bald guy that's sleeping on the train is the same in the first scene as well as the last scene.
Oh,
that's how it sets it up. That's the foreshadowing of the.
Totally missed it. All right.
But you see the difference, and that's why it's a bit weird because you see that. And then you see Vinnie Jones, like the professional, just dispatching with ease.
Yeah.
It was really interesting the way they used the camera shots in this as well, because you don't see Vinnie Jones himself until at least halfway through the movie. Like the first couple of kills, he's
right.
Like shadow.
Setting up,
And the way they blur the camera, I think was massively done. It's funny because, as well, when they keep talking about this being a Bradley Cooper movie, I never thought of it as a Bradley Cooper movie.
No, it's
Vinnie Jones
movie, straight up.
Yeah, I mean, this was before Bradley Cooper became Bradley Cooper, I mean, but now watching it back, I can't help but think that because he's become propelled to be this huge star. Though isolated and alone, I think he's a terrible actor. He needs people around him to help really lift him up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you see that in this film because if it wasn't for him playing against Vinnie Jones, who gives a fuck about this kid? Like, he's not good.
Yeah, that's the thing is it went from being okay to he's kind of going a little over the top. And then when he just gets full psychosis and Maya starts getting crazy too, it's like, this is so far removed from the beginning of the movie. I understand we're supposed to be seeing him fall down this rabbit hole, but like this is where he should be. This is where he is.
See, I like more the idea. This is where, and then again, this is where I think the studio can't deal with Barker. I like the idea of him being seduced into the role. I mean, you see the scene in the diner where Leon's looking in the mirror and Mahogany's looking through the glass at him, and there's this unspoken thing between them. And there's also was that first scene when he's taking a picture of him, Mahogany grabs him. It's like him making a decision about him. as if you're going to be the one. They started off with a seduction scene, and then they just went off the rails. Do you think that was bad storytelling or studio interference?
I would almost say both, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't interpret it that way at all. Like, that's how it was in my head because of the story. Like, he ended up, like, there was no seduction at all. It was just him being sort of forced into it and realizing that, oh shit, I have to do this or else. Whereas in this film, I felt like he wasn't being prepped by Vinny, by Mahogany at all. He was like, Mahogany was just trying to do his damn job, because there was none of that setup of I'm getting old and I have to pass the torch from Mahogany at all in the film. And so that's why it was never in my head at the seduction. It was Mahogany going, I'm going to fucking kill you. I'm just waiting for you to be in the right place at the right time. There is ultimately a point where Mahogany sees him like, okay, I see you now are obsessed with this and you're not actually the victim, even though I'm still going to probably murder you. But I never saw it as Mahogany, like, sort of conditioning.
No,
I think it was
definitely the powers that be that were seducing him.
Right, because I just saw it as a wasted opportunity, because there was those two elements, like I said, that scene when they encounter each other, when he's like, Mister, just want to take a photo, and Mahogany's looking at him, and then that scene in the diner. I didn't see Menacer. I saw something else, and I think it was just wasted. If they had went down that route, God, this would have been such an intense movie.
Yeah,
of him being drawn into the fold as opposed to being bludgeoned in, because it was almost like he was a square peg. Leon's character, square peg, getting hammered into this round hole, completely unsuitable. Where if they had done the seduction thing, it would have been so much more powerful, and it wouldn't have cost any more money.
Right.
And we could have got rid of Maya.
Yeah. We should have gotten rid of Maya.
Because if they had them always glancing at each other and seeing back, and it was the dream sequence scene where it got, but it was just so badly done with the CGI, it made me cringe again. Where he's hanging upside down, and then you see that shitty digital fake blood, and he sees his own reflection, and he's killing. You know, they put it there, they teased us with it, but they didn't play with it. They kind of just went, okay, we'll throw us in, and then we'll shove it to the side because we want a nice, safe, sanitized plot.
Yeah, I like the idea of him falling into darkness, because he finds himself becoming attracted to the idea of this horrific thing, just because he's spending so much time hunting it down and trying to get to the bottom of it, that it becomes this obsessive, even subconsciously, this obsessive need to be around it, to be in it. And so that seduction is all self-inflicted, in my opinion, throughout the film. And that's where he's sort of slipping into this, I need to get close to the madness, as close as I can, because it's so attractive to me. And we're set up from the beginning. He's a photographer. That's what he's attracted to anyway. And so it's easy to believe he slips himself into it. If it was a sort of almost a mentoring process of Mahogany seeing Leon as this potential, maybe some other train line,
like if I had to use a far superior movie like Halloween Ends, and use that storyline in this.
How dare you? How dare you?
I don't even know where to go with that.
I'm sorry, your faces was worth that alone.
Oh man.
Yes, exactly that.
Nailed it.
Let me traumatize with co-hosts. Gotta love it. I just think there was an opportunity there. I was just thrown away. And I don't know, because like I said, I want to see some of Ryû's other work, because he seems to be quite an envisioned principal director from what I've seen of him. So unless he's talking shite and he's just another bubblehead, I don't know. Until I see another one of his movies, I'll not know. But I don't see somebody having that sort of same vision, and the fact that Barker didn't butt heads with him and said, "Yep, you do your thing. I completely trust you." I can't see him being that lazy.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. And there's a lazy theme to this movie. There's a kind of lazy of let's just get it done.
Yeah, I think that's inevitable when studio interference hits. because the director is trying to just make the goddamn movie, you know, in his own vision, inspired by the original short story, but he wants it to be his way. And I face this, you know, creatively in my real life. I mean, you get so much interference from the client or the studio that at some point you're just like, all right, it's not worth fighting anymore. Let's just get this turd off. Let's pinch it off and just move on. Just
get it on, get the money, get the fucking something worthwhile.
Sometimes it's not worth fighting anymore. And maybe, you know, maybe that's one of the things that he sort of left on the cutting floor of, you know, possibly just saying, I'm not even going to explore it anymore. Let's just move on.
Yeah.
I think we kind of mentioned Detective Hadley. I brought her up. He's brought her up anyway. Did we need more in depth into the conspiracy itself?
No.
Or was that just
I don't know.
an X-Files type stuff? You know,
Well,
Smoking Man type thing, where it actually takes away from the original plot.
It didn't make much sense. Like there's already like 3 different stories going on. Why add another and not even really pay it off? Like the payoff being that she hands him the train schedules at the end of the movie. Like her character was pointless. Yeah, I really don't think we needed her at all.
Yeah, I think more dialogue between maybe him and the train driver, or not, you know, talk about the purpose. Not that antagonist. I didn't like the antagonistic tone that was taken in the movie. I don't think it added, because how can you have, if you're, maybe it's this whole, maybe this is where the fear of having an outright villain started creeping into the studios. But someone who relishes what they do and understands what they're doing for a purpose, maybe this is where it started, because this is 2008, so we're getting that sort of 2010 period where this nonsense started getting into filmmaking, that they're afraid of villains. They have to make anti-heroes, they have to make tragic characters, you know, this sort of mindset. So they're making him almost downtrodden and a victim himself, which I just found was weird. Where in the short story, they were collaborative, they were both working towards a purpose.
Yeah.
Add that with Detective Hadley, and I just didn't get it.
Yeah, I'm afraid if they would have tried to explore it more, it would be even more superfluous. You know, we would be arguing that they did. And the fact that they didn't show it enough, and we're still arguing that we don't really quite grasp it, tells us it shouldn't have been there at all. Because there's no way you can flesh that out with everything that you're also trying to tell simultaneously. And you just don't need it. Like, if you just had you have the fucking short story. Like, you have all you need to tell a really interesting story. Just pay off that ending and it explains everything. Yeah. You could just have the police officer be shitty at her job, because some are, you know, and then we would just be like, okay, well then that's just them. Who gives a fuck? But you start to add in these ideas and create this grand conspiracy, but you don't pay it off. It leaves us wanting to understand that. And I don't think every film needs to explain everything. In this particular case, I just think it was underserved.
Yeah, the kind of, like I said, the studio wanted to actually remove the whole idea of the fathers. And it's like, why? That's the...
it's like that's the whole point of why he's doing it.
Like, what else could you have put in this place?
Killer clowns from outer space.
But then it would have been candy floss hanging. No, not just the bodies.
Yeah.
It'd have been actually a lot quicker. Pew, 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 pew. Has that bloody game come out yet?
No, not yet.
There was meant to have been out in February. And
are you kidding? I'm fucking taking time off as soon as that shit comes out.
What? Okay.
The Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Never heard of it.
Oh yeah,
it's made by the same people that did the Evil Dead game, so it's going to be easy.
No way. Yeah, so I'll never be able to play it successfully. Thanks. Give me an easy mode for fuck's sake. Jeez.
Right.
Yeah, just give old fart fucking mode that just.
I've still never been able to
feel like I'm accomplishing something, and let the professionals do their thing. Let's talk about the most horrifying scene in this movie. Like, it sickened me to my core. What was the point of that tofu scene?
Oh god!
You know what, man? Good, properly
squeaking on its
fried tofu is pretty goddamn good, man.
It's so funny.
I just think it's funny because it's like, why would you want to fry your tofu on a griddle that does nothing but meat?
Like, and they made the whole joke about it. Like, what are they trying to tell about this character? I know it's setting it up for the later scene when he starts eating. Oh, by the way, anybody ever does that to my plate, they're getting stabbed with a fork.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. My fork is going in their fucking hand. Plain and goddamn.
And not only out there, but he's like, this fucking meat. I'm like, you fucking arsehole.
Yeah, somebody's getting their ass kicked over that.
Yeah, that's fucking pushing the boundaries of any friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mind the tofu thing. I understood what they were trying to do. It fell flat.
Yeah,
there was no need. And that's what I'm talking about, the whole seduction thing. That would have worked so much better. You wouldn't have had to have had that block of horrible shit. You wouldn't have had to have seen that horrible scene where he's sticking his hand in somebody else's plate. Like, that's the most disgusting thing in its whole movie.
Right.
Like, fuck him.
They're just grabbing somebody's steak with their
fucking hand. Not even, if you had even went for fork, do you mind? But fucking putting the hands in and fucking oh, Jesus Christ, that was just... I like Mahogany. Hurt it and kill this bastard. He deserves it. Fuck's sake.
Damn.
Sorry, I might have some views about that.
Maybe.
Clearly.
I might happen to have some opinions.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole time I'm just like, whatever. Okay, whatever. I didn't know across the pond you're like screaming, no!
Not the steak.
Fucking bar fights have been starting for like the whole thing of nicking somebody's chip. Like, that's the end of relationships.
Jesus.
You just don't fucking do that.
Order a new one.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, there's been duff-ups in a bar. Like, or people go to the chip shop after the takeaway, bag of chips, and somebody's like, yoink. That's fucking... Next thing you know, everyone's like fucking smelling the streets. That's all you have to do.
All right.
So what you're saying is, if I move there with my wife, next time she does that, I can fucking sock her, and it's acceptable.
Well, absolutely, it's required by law.
All right, fuck. I ain't get the fuck out of this country then. She's always stealing my goddamn food.
Get everything. She did what? Okay, yep. Case closed.
Case closed. What an asshole.
We're so sorry. Do we need to dispose of the body for you?
Oh man. Yeah. So the whole thing with because there's the whole reason this didn't, like, that's why I put at the start, the only making 3.5 million on a 15 million budget. Peter Block, apparently he was like their proponent, he was their advocate, and he's the one that was leading this movie. He left Lionsgate under Hollywood circumstances, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The usual fucking rats in a barrel, you know. And then Joe Drake took over, and he just decided to axe every project. And this is apparently a done thing in Hollywood. The minute a new director moves in or a new CEO, for some reason, they can't just let the company make money to finance their projects. They have to destroy everything. It's
that's the Hollywood system for you. There's a lot of shit that's been just dead in the water because of exec changes.
It's a mad culture. But this is the reason why Joe Drake effectively just wanted to stick it to Peter Block. And that's why this ended up, it was come for the release. Nobody knew about it. Barker didn't know about it. Ryûhei didn't know about it. And then when they found out, it was only being released in like 100 cinemas, and they weren't even like inner city ones. They were like out in the sticks, and just like, this movie got torpedoed in the worst way possible without actually just cancelling it. Like, what the hell's that all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fucking dick move.
Studio politics,
Well, and it's like it's almost worse than it just being thrown in the can and thrown in a fucking warehouse somewhere, never to see the light of the day. That's like kicking somebody when they're already down. It's like, oh, you made this while you were here? I'm gonna shit on it, and then you get to see me shit on it.
Yeah, it's fucking. And I don't even know if those two had it. I didn't go into the whole story. I didn't want it because I fucking don't want to read news articles. Gotta be swinging from something. If it
Yeah,
did
but
that.
I don't think you need to. I mean, just look at what happened with Warner Brothers and the DCEU. And as soon as they get a new guy coming in charge, he axes everything that went before and he starts his own thing. That's just, you don't want to be known as someone else's projects. You want to be known as your own projects.
Yeah.
What can you do without the nastiness?
I mean, that's the industry, it's cutthroat. They want to come in, they're going to put their stamp, and then they're going to go on to the next, higher up position, so they continually climb that ladder and make more and more money. That's just what those execs do. And yes, creative projects get fucked or canned on the way, but they're not going to change their industry because it's built on how people want to make money and make a name for themselves. And we as fans just have to either complain or accept.
Yeah,
can't change it.
No, I think that's why we need to that's one of my major things. We need to consume less Hollywood and more independence, and just not fucking financing. But because that's the problem, they have so much venture capital to begin with, and then they have so much money to waste that they can do that. They need maybe a bit of a reality check where people just step away and go, "Do you know what? You don't need my money. I'll give it to someone more worthy who actually genuinely wants to create something." I suppose that's hard to change the mentality. We're all used to
it really is.
Be comfortable.
Well, it's like part of the reason why there's always industry strikes every few years is to essentially put the kibosh on Hollywood accounting. But it's one of those things, like, unless everybody all at once is like, it's going to stay the same, because they have put themselves in a position where they're untouchable and their methods are, the gospel. So it's so hard to even think of some way to change that shit.
Yeah. I don't know. I just try my little corner of the internet to maybe carve out a little niche, build a little smaller sandbox. To try and encourage those that don't want to subscribe to that shit, because it's horrible. There was absolutely, unless there was an actual bad blood for them to go and do this to a movie where the funds from that movie would have helped the studio to finance the new projects. And it's not like this movie was part of a cinematic universe. Right. You can understand stopping a cinematic universe and rebooting it and doing that, but a standalone movie, what threat is that to someone? Where there's another money-making, giving you time to build your own projects. This is just my stupid logical brain jumping in here.
Yeah.
As well, I'll never be famous or rich because I don't think right. But let that movie make its money and then use that money to finance your things while you quietly line your ducks up. I just don't get this venom for absolutely no reason. I can understand if there's a personal reason behind it and like a severe rivalry, but just as a course, matter of course, just doing it to be doing it, to be nasty for the sake of being nasty. I never understood that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to put your dick on the table. Just no one can understand it. You just got to do it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to smell it. It's going to be there. So push it on the table.
Cheese and all. Oh man. Yeah. When I found that out, I'm just like, what the hell? People are mad. And it's not the only story, obviously, but it just seems to be, particularly with Clive Barker's work, that he hits this every single fucking time. And it's just like,
yeah.
And I think he's too late. I think we talked about this last time. Unfortunately, he's too long in the tooth now, as in he had a golden opportunity, I think, with a loyal fan base to maybe carve out something a bit smaller but more true and long standing. And I'm kind of worried because he's definitely one of the greatest authors, in his storytelling. I would argue that he's better than King.
Oof.
Because King's became very.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, but
there's I've never read a Clive Barker book that's made me openly weep. I have read
Same.
Dr. Sleep. I was crying.
Same.
It got me. And so, how do you quantify that? I mean, I prefer Barker to King but King makes me feel more than Barker. So it's a weird, it's I can't really say one's better than the other.
Maybe maybe the word better is not the best descriptor, but I definitely enjoyed
Barker. It depends on what you're going for. Like if you want
satisfied reading Barker.
Basically, for me, if I want something short, sweet, and filling, I'm going for Barker. But if I want to go on a journey, like something that's going to take me a bunch of time to read and make me rethink things, I'm going for King.
Oh, I want you to read some of Barker's more epic stuff.
Weaveworld.
I've read
Imagica is epic.
Yeah, I haven't gone
the
to
whole
that.
Books of the Art is just fucking phenomenal. And then those are like those epic stories that are definitely worth it and on par with King's epic.
Yeah, he's not just a one-trick pony. That's my point.
Yeah.
He's not. But what I'm trying to say here is I'm just worried that he's going to be forgotten.
No.
Oh, I don't think so.
There's no way in hell.
People like us, as long as we live.
Yeah. No, he's somebody that he will be eternal. Like there's no way his work is just going to disappear.
The fact that people are doing his, adapting his work and then actively looking to destroy his work while making it, like which was seen during this movie, is just mental. It's weird, the aversion that he brings, especially normies. This is Barker's definitely not entry level horror where a lot of King stuff you can watch casually.
Right.
Barker, you have to be invested.
Well, and especially if it's like true to his style, because it is very gritty. It is very sexual. And if you're, lights off, socks on, missionary type of person, it's going to just devastate you.
Like actually, we'll talk about Lord of Illusions last time, and that's as close to Barker as you get at an adaptation with the undertones.
I don't know. I thought Hellbound Heart. Hellraiser was great. Like the original one, it was very, very like close to the novel. Candyman is very cinematic as far as like narratively is very, very close to the story.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because we'll do maybe Candyman, the original one, obviously. How it's so different from the short story, but there's still that element, and you can definitely tell a difference between British version and the American version, and the I don't know what the priorities are.
Yeah,
what Americans see as opposed to what British people see. It's a really thoughtful piece of work.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That'll be a good one to talk about, I think. I know we
Definitely.
already talked about the remake, but we'll maybe share that for some time as well. This wasn't really there. Would we have benefited from seeing the father of fathersness, or would it have been cheesy as hell?
It would have been cheesy as hell. Like the thing is, with a movie like this, the shit is just so there out in the open that to see some behemoth of a creature underground, it just probably would have looked goofy as fuck. Like a guy that's shot really close and then planted on the screen with the other people, or just straight up a CG creature. Like I think it would have looked terrible. Because with stuff like that,
would it have been like Sugar from the Doom series? Was it Doom or was it Quake? No, Quake.
I never saw it.
The thing with tentacles and like it was like a blobulous sort of. I would have liked to have seen the temple and the sort of pyramidal. I would like to have seen that. Obviously, they didn't have the budget, so we got a few bones piled up. Like
right,
fucking messy eaters. Like,
I mean, at least they're putting stuff in piles. They might not be throwing it out, but at least there's some semblance of organization. It's like shitting in the corner factory versus just wherever.
So they have the fucking train that goes to the bottom of the meat processing factory, which obviously deals with the bones. So why aren't they fucking shovel? Like they spend the time cleaning down the train, they might as well fucking.
Well, because if they cleaned up, then Bradley Cooper wouldn't have been able to stab him in the throat at the end of this show.
Yeah, that's true.
I suppose, yeah.
I did like that. That was like that one connection with the story that I really appreciate, even though it was bone and not a knife. I still was like, oh yeah, that's great. And just seeing Vinny just sitting there like, I was just fucking awesome. Like I didn't know he was an athlete until today. I didn't know he was an athlete. I've never looked him up or anything.
That's
I've just
funny.
seen him in films. And so seeing him act, to me, I was just like, yeah, that's just who he is. And now that I know he's actually an athlete, now I'm amazed at how good he is at not really, like, he doesn't really act. He's just an imposing figure. But I really enjoyed seeing that bone through the throat and just sort of him resigning himself finally to, okay, I have to pass the torch because I'm going to fucking die, you know? And there's this unspoken connection because he knows he took over from someone. He knows he has to pass it on because these things behind him are eternal. So like at some point you just have to resign yourself to your fate. And I feel like I saw that in him.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's that's the only time he actually says anything is, what do you say? Do it or something like that.
Welcome.
Yeah. Right before he gets stabbed in the back of the head. It's like, yeah, that's fucking awesome.
Just comes right out here.
Yeah.
They're good. They do that so brilliantly, and then they do fucking schlocky CGI scenes. It's like, pick one.
I want to go on the other side of that whole monster thing. It would have been silly, but at least then it would have paid off what those creatures were there for. You know, they could have at least explained that aspect of it. And it's so frustrating to me because this is the only sort of primordial evil story that I can think of for Clive Barker. All of his other stuff, it doesn't have that sense of timelessness, but grounded on Earth. Whereas, you know, Lovecraft does it sort of this sort of cosmic horror. This felt really close to that, but grounded on the planet. You know, like the dark in the ages before man crawled, this thing existed. And so
the only one that came close was that one he talked about with the swimming pool, where the developers sneaking into the swimming pool encounters like a nymph type creatures. Can't remember the title of it now.
What are you talking about?
One of his short stories is like a primordial aspect to it.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it's a developer. It's Books of Blood.
It's been like 20 years since I've read the Books of Blood.
All right.
So I don't remember all of them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's why I wanted to see it, even if it was like ridiculous Spawn looking, you know, like some of the Spawn creatures.
Well, the fact that it was a temple, you know, an a civilization. So it wasn't just, you know, scary creatures that could be easily herded up and put into a cage.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that it was an ancient civilization older in time.
Yeah.
We kind of lost that, but if they could have done it if they'd spent less time fucking about with some of the other stuff.
The thing is, they didn't think they did a bad job with the CGI. I'm sure
that's what they're talking
about. Time
was
bad, yeah.
Maybe for the time, maybe because it was still new and possible, you know, things weren't possible. And if you think back I always use the stuff as an example of the bad aspect of practical effects because things took so long. You know, the whole transformation, you know, and everyone's like waiting around for 5 minutes for it to happen. So CGI brought that sense of urgency, which you couldn't have had before. So it's still quite new, but I think looking back now, it's just so hokey, and cartoony that it, you know, because they haven't quite, like I said, it's taken a while, and they're still trying to perfect the technique, and understand they have to merge the two. It can't be one or the other. That's why I finally gone back to practical effects with a layer of CGI, which is the way forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose final thought with this, Barker has said he's already the 2 sequels written, Midnight Meat Train 2 and 3. Will we ever get to see it or read it?
I really doubt it.
I don't think so. I don't think ever. He's had so many projects that he's been in the middle of or has scripts for or has treatments for that have never seen the light of day. I just like the Toll, that bridge between Hellraiser was meant to be like this novella, but he just never got around to finishing it. And so some other author picked it up from him and finished it for him. So it's just, I think he's one of those creatives that has so much going on. He likes to bounce around to whatever is in the forefront of his mind, but he's always working on some other stuff back here that it means that we don't get to see everything ultimately. Yeah, I don't mind, you know, I like the short story for the tightness of it, and it's succinct and it's beautiful and terrifying. And that's all I really need. I don't need to have a whole franchise off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe less is more.
Yeah,
in this
absolutely.
case. Would this final thought? Would this benefit from a remake?
Oh man,
I don't know. Like they would have to actually redo the story, because I feel like the story just doesn't work with this modern age. Like my thought is, I would have loved to have seen this, because originally, if I remember correctly, Bernard Rose was supposed to do it after he did Candyman, and I would love to see Bernard Rose's version of Midnight Meat Train.
that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see it remade personally, but
yeah, maybe just if we could tidy it up a bit. But yeah, it's I do have plot issues. Definitely visuals. Even if they tidied up the visuals, there'd still be the plot issues to contend with.
Yeah.
Especially in today's creative sort of atmosphere, don't think it would be any better.
Yeah.
Like
if they did a Books of Blood, which they tried to do, and it's just like a creep show thing, where it's episodic. And
did
this
he
is
not
just
have
one
an
of the
HBO
episodes.
series, or was that canned?
They had a Hulu Books of Blood thing that came out, which was a couple different stories that intertwined. It was okay for what it was, but if they did that with that sort of creep show approach, I think that it would be an infinitely stronger adaptation, because it would be short and it would be just the meat of the story.
Literally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like that's the thing with this story in particular. It's all third act, and having two other acts with it's just kind of like, fuck, what do we do?
From guys, as always, thank you very much. This is another fun one. Covered quite a bit. Love the tangents as always. Irrespective, we'll love Barker. He's just one of those people that takes you places, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to go there because they're scared.
Pussies.
Wimps.
Right.
Hey guys, once again, thanks very much.
Thank you.
And as always, keep up to date with the channel, do the typey clicky things, and until next time, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.
Horrific.